Daycare workers. What is the most shocking family secret you've been told by a 3-year-old? I dated a girl with 2 kids. I was watching them while she went to the doctor. She had a serious medical problem and she wanted the kids not to be there and see her all stressed out. Was watching Toy Story with her 3-year-old daughter. I guess the daughter started understanding that her mom and I are more than friends. She asked, "Would you hit Mama?" I was shocked, and I said, "Of course not. What put that idea in your head?" She teared up and said, "My daddy used to hit her." And she started crying. I just did my best. I explained to her that I would never hurt any of them, and how people who love each other should behave, and that her dad had a sickness that caused him to act strangely. He was an addict. I got her a popsicle and she calmed down as Buzz Lightyear and Woody were flying into the car. I was aware that their dad hit their mom, but I didn't know the daughter witnessed it or would even remember. I hope that for the girl's sake, the mom's eventual partner, even if it wasn't OP, ended up being, a better human being in general. That's strictly about the abuse thing, not the addict thing. That can really happen to a lot of people for a lot of reasons. I'm not judging on that. The physical abuse is not great. I'm glad that the mom had the ability to remove herself from that situation, because hell, I can't imagine that was an easy thing to do. I hope this thread isn't all like this, but I'll be honest, my hopes are not high. Also, if I sound a little funny, it's because I'm just on the tail end of recovering from a sickness and finally feel better enough to record, so let's hope I can get through this and not be, too nasally. Next story. When my son was 3, I bought my wife Titanic on video. Yeah, it was a long time ago. It was for her birthday. He asked if he could watch it after nursery school. We said it wasn't really a film for children, it was a film for grown-ups like Mummy and Daddy. When I picked him up later, his nursery teacher was stifling her laughter, as he had been telling everyone all day that it was his mummy's birthday, and that Daddy had bought Mummy a special video that only mummies and daddies could watch. Next story. I teach 2-year-olds. We were asking the kids what their parents' names were just to see if they knew. I asked a little boy, "What's Mommy's name?" He says, "Michelle." Then I asked, "What's Daddy's name?" And he looks confused, as if he's trying to figure out the answer, but can't. So I ask, "What does Mommy call Daddy?" Assuming he would say, John. Instead, he looked up at me and says, "Big Papa." And I couldn't help but bust out laughing. Next story. Not really a shocking secret, but it got a laugh out of me. I had my preschoolers rounded up for circle time. Going off of their interests of the day, I decided to ask who was a boy and who was a girl, since that's what happened to be the one thing every 3-year-old cared about that day. Through the sea of children, I hear a couple of responses. "I'm a boy," "I'm a girl," etc. Then, out of nowhere, all the way in the back, I hear, "I'm black." Yeah, he sure was. God, I missed that class. Good times. Next story. My grandma owns a home daycare, and a female toddler that she babysat decided to try and pull down a male toddler's pants and, quote, kiss his pee-pee. My grandma immediately asked her where she learned that. She said, "My daddy." My grandma reported it and an investigation was done. Her family was actually very grateful that she did it. Even her dad. An investigation was done and they found nothing wrong. The parents 100% cooperated. Kids sometimes really just say odd things. But they were glad to know that my grandma takes those sorts of things seriously. So I guess not a family secret, but my grandma certainly thought it could have been at the time. Next story. I once had a little girl tell me she saw Daddy licking Mommy like a doggy. That was hilarious and awkward. There were a handful of really sad cases as well, where children would disclose neglect or abuse. One girl in particular had a meltdown one day when she had an accident in her underwear. Turned out that her mom would slap her around just gently enough to not leave a mark and lock her in a closet when she, quote, misbehaved, which included accidents. Needless to say, we reported the mother to CPS and did a rush job washing the girl's clothing so she would go home in the same clothes she wore to school, without her mom knowing about the accident. Lots of kids spilled the beans on new pregnancies or divorces, arguments between parents, or infidelity. Kids see and hear a lot, and they tend to have an incredibly good memory for that kind of stuff. Next story. I don't know if this counts, but a 3-year-old told me he had belly aches every day because Mommy gave him too much sleepy juice. I said, "What's that?" He didn't know. I brought it up to her and she said it like it was normal and all fine, even with a little laugh. Yeah, sometimes I give him a little bit too much NyQuil because the little crap doesn't sleep. And I was like, no child that age should have any NyQuil. She laughed it off and said, oh, he's been getting it since he was a year old. Nothing bad has happened. And on top of that, the kids always came in smelling like strong weed. CPS was called. Next story. Not a daycare worker, but I used to have a tax practice. A client came into my office to drop off his tax paperwork with his 5 kids, age 3 to 10, in tow. He said he needed to go run an errand and left, leaving the kids in my office for me to babysit while I worked on his taxes. The kids were shy, quiet, and well-behaved. But finally, the youngest starts a conversation with me. He tells me that daddy hits mommy. Oh boy. Next story. This isn't exactly scandalous. The shocking things I have heard usually involve abuse. We had a family from Texas move to the daycare I worked at in Illinois. The boy would try and tell us stories, but we could never really fully get all the details for it to make sense. It would usually go like this. You know who's bad? Who's bad? The black man. Who? The black man is bad. He hurts people. What man? Why does he hurt people? The black man. He's scary. After a few weeks of this, the boy was the one to always bring the black man topic up. I was finally able to discover that the black man was Darth Vader. I'd assumed that perhaps this Southern family had a streak of racism, but it turned out I was just prejudiced against Southerners. You know what, OP? Of the possible outcomes, I would consider that the better one. I would also have questions if any child really said the black man was bad. I wouldn't necessarily jump right to racism because, colors are an accurate descriptor for a child for any reason. And hey, Darth Vader, he's not exactly chromatic. So in one sense, fair enough, kid. Next story. Oh my, I can't believe this isn't one of the first ones that popped into my head. Okay, so there was a little girl and a boy, about 3 and 1. They were in foster care and had great foster parents. Well, they would get picked up about once a week by a social worker and taken to their parents for visits. Well, one time when they came back from the first unsupervised visit, the little 1-year-old started breathing really heavy and raspy, and then all of a sudden, barely breathing at all. We think maybe an allergic reaction or something. Of course, we call an ambulance. Then, not even 10 minutes after he's off to the hospital, it happens to the little 3-year-old. But she starts throwing up and then not being able to breathe. So we're like, what the hell is going on? The owner goes to the hospital with the kids and calls later to let us know what happened. Turns out the real parents poisoned both of the kids. They turned out okay. The little boy had a lot more in his system and was in the hospital for a few months. But overall, everything went back to normal. Needless to say, the parents went to prison. Their reason for doing it was because if they couldn't have them, then no one else could raise them. Which made no sense because they were pretty close to getting them back. You never know how crappy some parents can be until you work in childcare. Next story. They tell me everything. If you lie to your daycare worker, your child will spill the beans. I have lots of 3-year-olds struggling with potty training. Every single parent will tell me they're working with the child at home. Your kid will tell me if that's true or if you're just putting them in a diaper as soon as you get home. Biggest thing I've been told, one little girl mentioned how her grandma tries to breastfeed her. Her grandma picked her up every day from daycare and had her just about all afternoon alone. We called parents and CPS. An investigation was done and grandma admitted to holding her like she was nursing, but claimed they were just cuddling. From my conversation with the little one, it sounded like it was definitely going on. She was really detailed for an almost 3-year-old. Grandma walked away unscathed and still picked little girl up from daycare regularly. Next story. With a group of 3-year-olds, we were coloring paper ties for Father's Day and talking about what their dads liked to do. As the kids were calling out their dad's hobbies, one little girl had an epiphany. She gasped and shouted in excitement, I have a dad! She had recently been adopted by her foster parents. Okay, before anyone says anything, my voices are not up to par right now. I've been out of practice for a little bit. Being sick as a voice actor, let me tell you, this sucks. Anyway, enough complaining. Moving on. Next story. Not super shocking, but I worked at a daycare for a couple of years, and the 2 stories I remember the most was when a little girl said to me when daddy takes a bath, mommy shaves his back. And another little girl who admitted when her dad watches her in the tub, sometimes he would drop a turd in the toilet. That latter one, her dad came to pick her up that day, and I could not look him in the eye. Next story. Not sure if this counts. My wife runs one. Had a day off from work, and a 6-year-old 3-year-old sits at the table next to me, and we start talking about different fish in the world. His parents were divorced, and they have a split custody agreement. He and his sister only come part-time. So I grab my phone, and we look up different tropical fish and whatnot, and after a bit he tells me he only likes his mom and sister. He hates his dad, stepmom, and stepbrother. Talks about how he is going to light his dad's house on fire with the people he hates still in it. I told his stepmom about it when she came to pick him up. He went to therapy for a while. His real mom gets a new live-in boyfriend every month or so. Apparently one has given him swirlies a few times, and another was a convicted child assaulter. The dad reports of this crap to CPS, but they never do anything about it. Next story. I once had CPS called on my parents because I told the daycare worker, "There was nothing to eat and I was starving." True story was my mom hadn't had time to get groceries and asked my dad to go before I left for daycare, saying something like, "Could you pick up the groceries? I don't want her to starve for another day tomorrow." I actually had breakfast that morning, but not the usual. I refused to eat it all. I never saw my mom so embarrassed ever again. You really gotta be careful what you say around kids. They will absorb every little word like a sponge. Your exact wording matters. Next story. Not a daycare worker, but something rather similar. I helped with foster children for a long time, and one who is in the process of being taken from her mother, 3 years old, told me giggling that, quote, "Mel was sucking mommy's boob." Mel was her grandmother. She also told me that when she was tiny, her mom would put her in a crib and a scary man came into the room, grabbing mommy, and jumped all over her while mommy screamed, "No, my baby is watching, stop." Everything about this one is just, I don't know, cause like, is it terrible? I guess it's terrible. There's part of my brain that's like, oh, it's just really weird. It's not quite terrible, but maybe it is. I don't know. I think this one just unlocked me. Next story. So I worked in a day nursery for about 4 or so years, and I will never forget the day that a 3-year-old outed her mom and dad for having an intimate swing in their bedroom by drawing a pretty graphic picture of the swing and her mom laying back in it and dad kneeling down in front of her. We reported it to management because of policies and procedures, but my lord, I had to leave the room and laugh before I imploded. The same child, maybe 3 or 4 days later, pipes up during a conversation about religion. It was around Christmas time, so we were covering what religions have what festivals or gods, etc. She announces that her mummy loves God very much and prays to him a lot at night. Without even thinking, we asked, well, how does she pray? She responded with the moans and, the, "Oh God, oh God, oh God, yes, I'm so close." And that she thought it was sweet that she felt so close to God. I miss this kid. Call me a coward. I was not saying that. Maybe on a different day if I was feeling better and feeling, I don't know, more willing to just go get her, but not today. Sorry. Next story. I had a kid call me a female dog before and slap me in the face. That one was fun. He was in the foster system, so he had already been through some things, I'm sure. It wasn't a secret, but having a pair of 4 to 5-year-old sisters reveal to me the details of their father's motorcycle accident that led to his death was heartbreaking. It all starts with, "My daddy is dead," and ends with, "He wasn't wearing a helmet." Spoiler alert, the story is terribly tragic and lengthy. Oh, and a girl who has a questionable home life pointed to a cop car and said, "It's the Popo. They took mommy away once and now I don't have a mommy anymore." Next story. I worked at a gym childcare center in high school, and a pair of 4-year-old twins, one who appeared to be mentally disabled, with an older sister came in. The little boy had these weird scars all over his arms and legs, like old cut marks healed over. The older girl, maybe 5 or 6, noticed me looking, and calmly explained that it was from when his twin sister had gone after him with a knife, and rolled up her sleeves to show me the same marks all over her arms. Apparently the younger girl had serious issues, and her parents apologized for not warning me when they came to pick her up. Never saw them again. Creepiest little girl I have ever seen. Next story. 2-year-old girl to my mother, her nursery teacher. "My mother says you're black." "Yes, I am." "My mother says she doesn't like black people." My mother is obviously black and a nursery teacher in a country where most other black, African/American/European people are temporary residents only, so most locals have never really interacted directly with black people. Bonus, this little girl is light brown-skinned and Arab, and apparently was told by her mother that she is white. Next story. My mom was a teacher, and one time the fire department came in to educate the kindergarten kids. They asked the kids to name different things in the house that are hot: the stove, the fireplace, etc. Then one kid raises his hand and says, "The weed is hot." I don't think anything ever came of it. It wasn't the nicest neighborhood, and this thing wasn't all that surprising. Next story. My kindergarten class had parent volunteers come in sometimes to help with projects. My mom signed up and came one day, but the other mother who was supposed to also come in called out sick. At recess, my mom saw the mother's son and said something like, "Hi, I heard your mommy was sick and I hope she feels better. Is she okay?" The boy said, "Yeah, she's okay, but the balloon in her boobie popped and she had to go to the doctor to get it fixed." Basically, she called out because her breast implant leaked or had some other issue. Not really shocking, just kind of funny. You know, girl, fair enough. That is as good of a reason as any I can think of to call out sick to something. Look, it's not the sniffles, you don't got a fever, but your breast did just explode, so, that seems like it bears some attention. Next story. Not a daycare worker, but worked at a summer camp. A year before, one of the counselors was arrested for inappropriate conduct with kids. Though the incidents didn't happen on camp, the counselor was known by all the kids. The first summer camp after the incident, one of the kids came up to us and asked if we would touch him like the other guy did. Next story. His wasn't so much of a direct confession, but it was definitely something his mama would not want getting out. While playing a tablet game, the little guy started talking smack to it, saying things like, "I'll eat your butt," and "Here comes daddy." It took everything I had not to die of laughter. I texted my now husband about it, so he promptly makes and sends a meme that had an Ewok from Star Wars and text saying, "I'ma eat your butt," so I had to excuse myself. Next story. Wife worked at a church Mother's Day out. To get the job, she had to literally write a paper about how she found Jesus and how super close they were. All the women up there are super religious and judgmental about how evil the world is. The other day, she's changing an 18-month-old's diaper and finds some weed that had come out of a grinder. I imagine the parents might have tipped it over and missed a little while cleaning up, and the kid managed to sit in it, which clung to the edge of the diaper. The mom actually works up there and is constantly complaining about the, quote, "damned liberals destroying America." Ah, yes, it's always the ones you most suspect, huh? This isn't a statement about politics, to be clear, just human nature. When people are super vocal about not liking something, they're usually trying to cover for something, that's all I'm saying. Next story. I taught the toddlers, but as the day wound down and the number of kids in the building dropped, they would slowly all trickle into one room for playtime and to basically wait to be picked up. I was the teacher in charge of the end-of-day playroom as well. There were two 11-year-old twins who were constantly happy, outgoing rays of sunshine. One day, they just weren't. I asked them if everything was okay. Apparently, over the weekend, their family had gone out to dinner and a movie. It took about, 3 to 4 hours. And when they returned, their house was a bloodbath. Apparently, their 3 dogs had gotten into a fight, which resulted in one dog dying. The girls walked in on the 2 surviving dogs covered in blood, eating the 3rd dog. Apparently, their parents enrolled them in therapy almost immediately, and it seemed to help a lot. Next story. I asked this question to my son's preschool teacher one day. She said one day it was story time, and all the kids were sitting in a circle on the reading rug. She was reading them a book about animals and the sounds each one makes. An owl comes up, and none of them know it. So she says, "It's an owl, and it makes the sound hoo, hoo." A kid decided to share, "Oh, my mom makes that noise when mom and dad are having private time in their room." Now, what kind of stuff is going on to make owl noises in the bedroom? I just don't see how this comes to be. All I'm saying, if someone starts hooting, I guess it must be pretty good, huh? Next story. Had a very troubled little girl who was already taken away from her parents and living with the dubious grandparents. She came in one day with a sizable wound on her head, nearly hidden under a hairband. I was doing one-to-one work with her in the garden when I noticed it, and I asked what happened. She tells me offhand that Granny got angry and threw a toy car, followed protocol, reported it, and then it was out of my hands. I wish it was the only thing that I needed to report with her. Poor kid. Next story. Not a daycare worker, but I've done a lot of babysitting. When I was 15, I watched a 7-year-old whose mother worked with mine. Mom was a secretary, and the little girl's mom was an APRN. I liked the girl. She was a smart girl, and I liked her mom. Anyway, one day the girl tells me that her mom's name isn't her real name, that she made it up for work, and it was like having a new mommy. I had no idea what the hell that meant. so I tried to ask more questions but didn't get very far, as I don't think the little girl really had any idea of what was going on. She did tell me her mom's real name, though, so I asked my mom about it. She didn't know either. She was curious, so she asked a couple people at work. Turns out the woman I was babysitting for had somehow faked everything. Her name, ID, degree, work history. She was not an APRN. She had no degree. Her real name was not the name she had given. It was freaking crazy. Nobody has any idea how she did it, how she managed to fake her way through that job with no goddamn training. The office they worked at was a fairly large and well-respected office in CT. She was obviously fired, and I no longer had my babysitting job. Next story. Not so much a secret, but I worked for a babysitting agency when I was in college. I got a request for a 12-hour job on a Saturday taking care of one little girl to a single dad. I was supposed to get to the house at 7 a.m. and the night before at about 10 p.m. I had a weird hankering to Google the dad. Sometimes the parents are really rich, and I like to know how they make their money. Turns out, the dad is a convicted murderer who did his time and was out. I immediately started catastrophizing that this man booked me for 12 hours so he could murder me in the morning and have a long time to get rid of the evidence before anyone noticed. It goes without saying I called the babysitting agency and told them I was not comfortable doing the job. Opie, I hope you told them why. That seems pretty important for them to know. Next story. Not a daycare teacher, but the parent. Little one was about 3.5 when I get a very serious phone call from her daycare to come in and talk about a comment my child had made. Jump in the car, zoom in there as quick as I could, and there's a police car already there. We get into the office to talk about what's happening. My child had told her teacher the marks on her chest and back were from when I beat her. Police officer looks at me and tells me this is very serious, and I'm just about to burst into tears because I can't imagine why my beautiful daughter would say such a thing. Then I remembered what was actually on her chest and back and burst out laughing like a maniac. My daughter had hives from an allergic reaction a couple of days before, and they were still slightly visible even with the cortisone cream and antihistamines that were prescribed by the doctor. Had to explain that I never beat my child. She had thought that because she had hives, it meant she had bees living in her, and by having to take medicine and have a special cream, I was being her to get rid of all the bees. Police officer had a good giggle, and the daycare teacher looked like she had swallowed some lemons when I pointed out that only hours before I had just handed her all the proper documents. Doctor's note, description of her allergy plan, etc., along with the bag of cream and medication for the hives. Next story. This literally happened today, and the boy didn't reveal all of it to us, but it was still interesting to find out. My coworkers and I found out that one of our students is a love child. Turns out his dad lied to his mom about his entire identity, name, job, where he lived, etc. He had a wife and kids that he hid from her. When the mom revealed she was pregnant to dad, he disappeared, and she hired a PI to find him. It's insane. You know, I know at least one person in this thread I think this dad would get along very well with. Common interests and all that. Next story. This doesn't really belong here, but reminded me of a story I wanted to share. My friend worked as a teacher's aide to a school that taught mentally handicapped students. One of the students was having a bad time, so she went over to ask him what was wrong. He replied with, "Nothing, I just want to get screwed up drunk and bang girls." Opie, this is a thread about daycare workers. You really have to specify the age on this. I think that changes a lot, personally. Next story. This reminds me that when I was in like 2nd or 3rd grade, we had an assembly of some sort or a speaker that talked about child abuse, and that if we see abuse, we should tell our teacher. For years, I had no idea what abuse meant, and only found out years later when I had the courage to ask someone. I guess what I'm trying to say is, as adults, we try to shelter our kids from the horrors of reality, but in some cases I wonder if withholding information may cause more harm. Next story. Not a family secret, but on more than one occasion, I was the first to witness a kid take their first steps. The first time I mentioned, "Oh, he was walking around like such a big boy," the mom almost fell down in shock. So I realized my mistake and said, while I held his hands. The next week she let us know, "He took his first steps." After that, I never mentioned it when a kid walked for the first time. There was also the frequent outing that mommy has a baby in her belly, or that mommy and daddy get real mad at each other and say loud words. Next story. When I was teaching childcare, it was to babies and toddlers, so they couldn't tell me anything. But I do have a few stories. One funny, and one sad. The funny one was the little girl who brought a sippy cup with her that morning, which wasn't allowed at our school. So I poured the juice down the sink to rinse out the cup, but noticed it smelled weird. I called the mom and asked her if she realized she had put wine in the sippy cup. She claimed she had wine in a pitcher in her fridge for some reason and grabbed that by mistake. Luckily, the girl hadn't drank any of it. The sad one was a baby who was dropped off just reeking of pot. She was asleep, and when she woke up, she was completely out of it. My boss claimed we had no evidence with which to call CPS, but my coworker and I knew that was bullcrap, so we called anyway. The baby's grandma rushed in a few hours later and picked her up. We never saw that family again. My coworker and I were written up for not following protocols. By the way, this was at one of the largest chain daycares in the US. Next story. Taught pre-K for about 12 years. Had this kid that was crouching behind a bookcase. Upon closer inspection, he had a gum wrapper and the contents of our pencil sharpener and was rolling a joint. Had a kid tell me that his mom had a secret and he wanted to share it with me. He then told me about their roach problem and how he's not supposed to talk about it at school. That one made me laugh. Had a few kids over the years disclose some abuse. Child services gets called with those. Kids tell everything. I know that your marriage isn't working out. I know your finances. And even if you bang loudly, kids will tell it all. Next story. Pretty mild, but a surprising and cute slip up. I was working in a 4-year-old classroom. We're drawing pictures, having a great time, and a little girl is showing off her art. There's a stick figure for mommy, daddy, little sister, herself, and one more. They're a family of 4. I inquire about the 5th stick figure, and the artist casually says, "Oh, that's the baby in mommy's belly." Dad came to pick up that afternoon, and we delicately asked if his wife was expecting. Not everyone likes to share that info, especially early on. His response, "Oh, crap, we forgot to tell her she couldn't tell anyone yet." Busted via preschool art. Next story. I'm putting together a book for my kiddo when she graduates high school called Texts from Daycare. I've taken screenshots of all the texts I would get throughout the 5 years she was there. Once I was giving her a bath, I think she was about 3, and she wanted to use my body wash. I must not have rinsed the washcloth well enough when I cleaned her privates. It burned, and I felt so bad. I texted Daycare. Her daycare provider is a friend of mine whom I've known since kindergarten that night to let her know what happened because I knew she'd say something about a mommy burning her. The texts I got that next day could only be described as epic. She said something like, "Mommy used her soap on me and it burned and I cried, but I told mommy I know she didn't mean it, but don't ever use that burned soap again. I watched TV and I stopped crying, but then I cried again because I had hot pee and mommy felt really bad, so I said no more burned soap." If I weren't so close with my daycare provider, that could have ended very badly, possibly with a visit from DCF. Another fun one. Daycare provider was driving and said, "Crap." Apologized right away, and my kid pipes up from the back seat, "That's okay. My mommy says that word all the time. And she says F to the cat." I do. That cat is a freaking asshole. Next story. I used to do ABA therapy with the little kids who have ASD. With one kid, we were doing some pretend play. We were playing restaurant, and I was the waiter while the kid was the customer. I asked her what she wanted to order, and she ordered pasta. I asked her if she wanted a drink with that, maybe some water or a juice. She said, "Oh, I'm the mummy, so I'll have the white wine, please." Terribly cute, and got a little blush out of the girl's mum when I told her later on. Next story. I work with kids a bit older than that, K to 2, so 5 to 8-ish. But sometimes you hear things. One of my second graders told me his dad works from home growing medicine. The fact that he grows weed isn't so shocking, but the fact that the kids know about it is. A 7-year-old once told me he was afraid to go into his parents' bedroom because, quote, Foxy lives there. This kid was huge into the whole Five Nights at Freddy's thing, so I figured his imagination was going wild. I talked to mom about it, and no, the kid's dad was a furry and had a fox fursuit in the closet. The kid found it one day when he was in the closet looking for a place to hide during hide and seek. Next story. My husband teaches a church class on Sundays for 6 and 7-year-olds. I don't remember what the lesson was on, but he started it by asking if any of the kids knew what geography was. One little kid instantly raised his hand and said, "Oh, I know what that is. My uncle went to jail for geography." Obviously, it wasn't really geography that was the issue. Oh. I did not realize what that was while reading it. Nope, I get it now. Ooh. If you are having trouble figuring it out, think of any, really bad crimes that might end with ography. Let me know. Don't put that in the comments. I changed my mind. Next story. Not daycare, but interning at a school. I was in one class a lot, and there was one boy who took to me straight away. He seemed a bit lonely and socially awkward and sought out adults rather than kids. The second day, he told me his mom left him and his dad about a year ago because she, quote, didn't want him anymore, and he had just lost his grandma last month, and now he was sad all the time. Another time, he and another kid were lingering around after school was out, and I jokingly asked them if they couldn't get enough of school. He said no, he'd rather always be in school because at home he was always alone, and that he hated the weekends. Also, all his dad did was work and complain. If he could, he would want to sleep in school. I really did not know what to say to that. The kid was super bright and on top of his class, but so sad. I talked to the teachers about him, and they confirmed he had a pretty sad and screwed up home life. Next story. I work with autistic kids. I work with one toddler mostly. He's low functioning, and we're building language with him. One day he's with my supervisor. The kid picks up a thing of Post-it notes, drops it, and then says in a whisper, "Damn it." In a family meeting, my supervisor told the kid's mom this, and we all laughed because he said damn it in the correct way instead of saying it over and over. The mom couldn't stop laughing, but also agreed to try and watch her language when her son is near. Next story. Not a daycare worker, but when my little brother was in Head Start, he had overheard my mom teasing my great aunt about her BOB, battery-operated boyfriend. He promptly went back the next day and told all the Head Start workers he was meeting our great aunt's boyfriend Bob after school. Head teacher told Mom when she picked him up. Mom explained what he meant. They both thought it was so funny. He's almost 16 now, and we still tease him about wanting to meet our great aunt's vibe. Next story. Speech pathologist who has mainly worked with kids here. My job is literally to get your kid to talk. They will 100% tell us whatever is going on with your family, from financial troubles to finding out if they're pregnant, or the crucial detail that their visiting grandmother has allergies, whatever seems really important to them at the time. Luckily, my clients have had pretty stable home lives, so nothing too dramatic, but I probably know too much about the families. Next story. I had a student in my class, age 3, who was constantly dropped off by his barefoot mom without any underwear. Granted, he was completely potty trained, so it wasn't a huge deal, and I just figured they were hippies. So one day we're coloring and talking about superheroes, and punching comes up. He says his mommy punches him. So I respond, "Oh, you mean like this?" And I give him a light, friendly nudge like, "Hey, you." And he shook his head. And he said, "No, like this." And he slammed his fist on the table. So I told him that it was a good thing he told me. I asked for a substitute to take a potty time, which was our code for "I need help" from a senior employee. If you actually need to pee, you use the term potty break. My manager met me in the front office and we filed a complaint with the CPS. Unfortunately, I gave birth about a week later and never returned, so I don't know what became of him. Next story. Kids I used to babysit had an abusive father. They were afraid of when he would come home. One kid locked himself into a room with his younger sibling and started hitting the window with a stick, saying he was going to end his sibling and then take his own life. I quit watching them, and the mother begged me to come back, but as a teenager, it was too much. The mother died under mysterious circumstances a year later. We are pretty sure he did it. These poor kids. I think about them all the time and wonder where they ended up. Next story. I've worked as a sports coach for kids aged 5 to 11-ish for years. One summer I was working at holiday club/camp we ran during the school holidays, walking around the field refereeing a game of football, soccer for you Americans. This girl and her mate come running up to me. They weren't interested in playing football or any sport for that matter, really, just wanted to chat. Little girl. "My daddy wears earrings," while looking at my pierced ears. "Oh, does he?" "Yeah, and sometimes he wears mommy's dresses too." "Oh, right." "And her shoes." "Does he?" "Yeah, my daddy's a pretty girl." Then skipped off to follow football around a little more. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing to expose your kid to, I guess. I don't know. I think cross-dressing is fine, right? Why wouldn't it be? Gender rules are stupid anyway. You go, man. Next story. Not super shocking, but one of my 4-year-old's parents recently divorced. Mom married a new guy and just had a baby with him, and dad is dating a new lady that the little girl doesn't like very much. It's amazing the things kids pick up on and will tell anyone who listens. She has told me that daddy and mommy aren't together anymore because, quote, "Daddy used to give mommy bruises and push her." It's incredibly sad to hear the sweet little girl say these things because I can tell she doesn't fully understand everything. Next story. First off, kids say a lot more than parents would probably like to know. I had a girl who was going to court against her biological dad who assaulted her. Got the full story from a coworker. She would not stop telling people to not let her biological dad come near them because he's mean and bad and will touch your privates. It really shocked me because this girl is the sweetest and funniest little girl ever. She's only 4. I've had kids who were playing Barbies and one of the mom Barbies started yelling at the child Barbie stuff like, "I wish you were never born, I hate you, I wish I never carried you," etc. Kids who talk about their parents' fights, what they said, where they went, and how many doors they slammed. Nothing is off limits at a good daycare because, hey, children can't go through these things alone. Often the parents don't want to talk about it, or they're the ones causing the problem. It's heartbreaking, really. Next story. Not a teacher, but I had my daughter's kindergarten teacher inform me that my daughter yelled at her classmates because someone brought in Jell-O for a class party. Everyone knows that there's booze in Jell-O, and she made sure everyone else there knew it too. I didn't realize I've never given my kids Jell-O, but I sure have made a lot of shooters out of it. The teacher laughed and asked for my recipes. Next story. It was really heartbreaking, but I was disclosed by a 3-year-old that, quote, mommy's friend who is a boy that lives with them had been assaulting her. She used different terminology, of course, but the nature of the preschool was one where we served a lot of families who had been referred to us by DHS. I ended up filing a report and the family got service and support, but it was really hard to hold it together while she was graphically describing being abused without realizing what it was or why it was wrong. So I had to suck it up and remain calm and stoic for the remainder of my shift. Next story. My preschool teacher carefully approached my mom after school one day to talk about adult education. My mother, confused, didn't know what she was referring to. The teacher persisted that there were many programs available for my father to learn how to read. My dad is a well-educated finance manager, but above all, a lazy one. Apparently, the day before, we were assigned to ask our fathers to read a story to us. My dad, nicknamed Roger the Dodger, sincerely told his firstborn son that he couldn't read. When I was asked at school what story my dad read to me, I declared my father was illiterate. Unfortunately, the plan obviously backfired for my dear father. Next story. This perhaps isn't what you're looking for, but I thought it was funny. About 10 years ago, I used to teach swimming lessons to preschool children, and once a little boy kept announcing his grandparents were the R word. I told him it wasn't a nice word and that we call people special needs. He was very confused and then blurted out, "Mom made a cake because Grandma is special needs now." His mom explained to me later that his grandma is retired, and they had a party over the weekend. So this kid, for a brief moment, thought that special needs meant retired. Sometimes kids really just can't say the words right or don't quite know what they are even, right? They don't see it in front of them. They have no way to piece it together. They just have to go off what's in their memory. This kid's memory just did him dirty a little bit, I think. Anyway, that's the end of today's video. A special shout out from me to the teachers and workers who intervened in cases that were more serious. It's important that someone acts when the parents won't or when the parents are a problem. These kids don't know what's wrong, and someone has to help them out. So great work, all you childcare workers. Keep doing it, man. For now, though, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.